Hello and welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. Star Trektember continues! The franchise had been dead for 4 years, arguably longer depending on how you viewed the other spin-off series. By the time Enterprise came around, Star Trek and pop culture had dropped off considerably. People were probably aware that there were more series going, but they certainly didn't watch it, and they'd be hard-pressed to say anything about them. When it comes to casual viewers, it was the original series and the next generation, and that's it. Those were the ones to be concerned with. Maybe they watched Voyager and DS9 when they launched, but they weren't around for their finales, and, well, Enterprise kind of repeatedly shot itself in the foot before it got to a point where it was pretty good, and by that point, the show was cancelled. The simple fact is that while I don't like the idea of a reboot, it was probably what the franchise needed, although I would have waited a bit longer and then did another time jump. A fresh start while also continuing the ongoing story. But nope, since pop culture is aware of the original series, even more so than the next generation, let's just do a prequel/reboot of TOS and go from there. And that movie, Star Trek, or Star Trek 09 as we'll call it from here, was the best Star Wars movie in years. Yeah, not letting that joke lie. Star Trek 09 is a mixed bag. The villain sucks, the plot is ridiculous, it is a full-on different continuity from the rest of the franchise, the aesthetics are poorly thought out, but at the same time, the acting is great, the music is phenomenal, the casting director deserves a damn award for getting people who convinced me they were these iconic characters, and they acknowledge the fact that dorks like me would be pissed off about the change in the timeline by openly acknowledging that this is a different universe. The original continuity is safe, and you can still enjoy it in Star Trek Online. Captain of the Luna-class USS Stellar, by the way. But yeah, I give them credit for trying with this movie, and it's a pretty noble effort. It's just Star Trek is about moving forward, but we had Enterprise, the Kelvin timeline, and now Discovery all in a row, and it's all prequel stuff. I won't even get into how Discovery is supposed to be a prime timeline show, and yet it clearly borrows more from the Kelvin timeline. That's a discussion for whenever I get around to doing a Discovery comic, and for when I get a Discovery uniform. Oh, by the way, I get them off of eBay. It is always eBay. And while I'm sad that so much of the franchise is now inspired from the Kelvin timeline movies, it's still a good thing that they got made. It created an entryway for new fans and kept Star Trek in the public consciousness, and I'm all about keeping Trek alive until we actually reach the 23rd century and beyond. It's just, as a hardcore fan, I'm not really that big on the Kelvin timeline movies, and Star Trek 09 in particular is just meh to me. Anyway, let's get to this adaptation. Before you ask, yes, of course I know about Star Trek Countdown, the prequel miniseries to the movie. In fact, I was originally planning on covering it as part of Star Trektember, kind of as a tongue-in-cheek follow-up to Countdown to Final Crisis, before I switched out the 500th episode to be Future's End, and that being my Countdown follow-up, but then decided it was more important to discuss the DC comic that had been my first Trek review. And quite frankly, as I've said, movies should not require supplementary reading. I'm happy that Countdown expands on this movie's villain and truly shows more about him, his motivations, and how things got like this. It's just a pity they couldn't bother putting that into the actual damn movie. Let's dig into Star Trek, the official motion picture adaptation. This is the longest movie adaptation we have ever covered on this show. 6 issues. I guess they finally realized that, hey, instead of having to cut anything from the adaptation, why don't we just make it longer so everything can fit? Of course, the real question they should have been asking is, why are we making a movie adaptation in 2010? The DVD and Blu-ray are out already. Yeah, seriously, this adaptation was released in 2010. Its final issue didn't come out until that September. It had been available on home media for almost a year before the adaptation was complete. And it's not like it was some massively popular thing that people needed to have. The comic orders were abysmal, even for a licensed book from a company that wasn't the big two, averaging around 4,000 to 6,000 orders. Image United number 0 was doing better than its first issue. Hell, I can list half a dozen other licensed books that had better numbers, including Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic number 50, Buck Rogers number 9, and friggin' Street Fighter 2 Turbo number 11. So yeah, this comic. No one needs it, no one wants it, so who was it made for? We're reading from a trade, though the scans are from the individual issues at Comixology, more on that in a minute, so no looking at the covers, which were either still frames from the movie, or just boring shots of a character or two taking up most of the image. Oh wait, I do know what you need this book for. The copy that was donated to me had someone's scribbles on the cover. So there's its prime value, I guess. But yeah, my scans are from Comixology, and normally I wouldn't talk about this, but since I took the time to actually purchase the legally distributed version of it, I have what may be a dumb question, but why are some of the copyright pages such really low-quality scans? Look at this crap. Everything's heavily pixelated, nothing's optimized or anti-aliased. The actual story contents aren't like this. They're perfectly fine, so why are these pages all screwed up? Anyway, we open on a deleted scene from the movie. Spock's birth on Vulcan. And already we see the timeline is screwed up, because we saw in Star Trek V that Spock was born in a random cave by some woman in a silly headdress. The best environment for delivering children. This woman's headdress isn't nearly as silly. The baby is healthy. Why does she cry? She is human. Or, you know, she just pushed 8 pounds of baby out of her vagina after however many hours of labor, and that freaking hurts! Sarek soon arrives. Amanda, I came as soon as I heard. So, my wife, I heard you had a baby. What's that all about? As you are aware, the Vulcan male is traditionally not present at the moment of delivery. I had to remind you of something you were already aware of. And that's totally the reason, by the way, not because I was out drinking with my friends or anything. It's here where they name him Spock after a Vulcan who helped build their society, though I'm more interested in the Vulcan hairdresser who changed Amanda's hairstyle over the course of these 3 panels. We cut to 3 years later, and the USS Kelvin, aka where this timeline got its name from. They've come across a strange anomaly, like a lightning storm in space. The captain enters the bridge. Polarize the view screen.
Increase the Flash Gordon noise and put more science stuff around.
Also, as a Star Trek nerd, I love how in Enterprise, instead of shields, they polarize the hull plating, and now polarizing is just a thing they do to activate the view screen. Out of the anomaly emerges a giant pine tree branch, aka some kind of weird alien ship. It immediately fires on the Kelvin, blasting it until finally the enemy ship hails them. Hello. My commander requests the presence of your captain in order to negotiate a ceasefire. You will come aboard our ship via shuttlecraft. Your refusal would be unwise. Well, at least they said hi first. I don't even get why they're bothering with all that when they already opened fire as soon as they saw them and crippled the Kelvin immediately. Why not just beam some people like the captain aboard? Why bother with the shuttle or anything like that? In any event, the captain complies, telling his first officer to evacuate the crew in 15 minutes if he doesn't report in. Once aboard the ship, he's shown a hologram of another ship and asked if he's seen it before. Who is your commander? Is it him? I will speak for Captain Nero. He's incredibly shy and doesn't want to embarrass himself. The guy speaking for Nero asks for the location of Ambassador Spock, who of course the captain doesn't know who that is. When asked what the current stardate is, 2233.04, Nero is unhappy with that answer, activates a space trident he's been holding onto, and stabs the Kelvin's captain with just a roar. Hey, look, Nero's had a bad day. He lost his planet, lost his wife, lost the dude he's trying to kill, and he just traveled through time and is 20 years early. So he needs some stress relief, and sometimes that comes by stabbing a dude who has been more than accommodating. They resume the attack on the Kelvin, and the first officer, aka George Kirk, orders the evacuation. His wife is going into labor too, as she's loaded onto a shuttle. The crew evacuates, but the autopilot function on the ship is destroyed, meaning someone needs to ensure that the ship keeps on fighting to the bitter end, or else the escape ships won't get away. His wife contacts him during this.
The shuttles will never make it if I don't fight them off.
But this Nero we're talking about, he's the toughest there is.
Well, he's never fought me.
Yeah, he has.
He's never fought me twice.
As the last ships get away and weapons and shields fail, he sets a collision course while the baby is finally delivered, the two deciding to name him Jim as the ship crashes into the knockoff Shadow vessel and ends issue 1. Issue 2 brings us to Spock's childhood, where he's studying in the most logical of locations, inside a small circular indentation in the floor. What is the central assumption of quantum cosmology? Everything that can happen does happen, in equal and parallel universes. Wow, Vulcans must have a very different conception of quantum cosmology than us, since ours is more about explaining how the universe works in regards to, like, quantum field theory and particles and gravity and relativity and stuff. Anyway, after his game of 20 questions, 3 bullies show up to harass him because of him being half human. This is fine. The prejudice against him by his own people is well established, but here's one bit of the bullying that makes me tilt my head. He's a traitor, you know. Your father, for marrying her. That human whore. I do not discount the possibility that these kids would know the word and what it means and the baggage that is carried with it, but frankly, to me, it reeks more of lazy screenwriting that didn't think through the implications. The word whore is a loaded pejorative specifically meant to shame sex workers because of a culture that sees sex work itself as something to be derided, insulted, and not to be respected, primarily thanks to a view of sex as a shameful act, or at least not something to be done casually or for money. And that, quite frankly, feels completely at odds with the Vulcans, who have a society where they're driven to mate every 7 years or they die. In Spock's case, when he experienced it, he was part of an arranged marriage. But I've got to assume that arranged marriages and the like aren't going to be a thing for every Vulcan, and there's going to need to be an outlet for the mating drive or the person dies, especially if they don't have a romantic partner. And it's not that Vulcans only have sex every 7 years or some crap like that. As original series writer D.C. Fontana has said, Vulcans mate whenever the hell they want to. They still get horny, it's just every 7 years their bodies feel a compulsion to do so. And since they still get horny, logically there would be people who would be happy to handle it for others, and I've seen no indication in all of Star Trek that Vulcans see sex as shameful. Now, like I said, it's entirely possible I'm off base about this, and Vulcans have the same kind of stigmas in regards to sex workers and whatnot, and are quite into insulting them. It's just, this is the only time I can think of when they've ever used a pejorative like this. Anywho, later, after Spock fights the bullies for that remark, Sarek talks to his son and says that eventually he's going to have to choose his own destiny, whether he'll be more human or more Vulcan. Over to young Jim Kirk, we have an expanded version of his childhood scene. It seems he and his older brother have been staying with their douchebag uncle. His brother runs away from home to get away from the uncle, and Jim decides to steal a vintage car that used to belong to their dad for similar reasons. And already the comic is better than the movie here because they don't have friggin' product placement in the future where money doesn't exist. Although they do mention that their uncle was planning on selling the car, so make of that what you will. But yeah, Jim sends the car over the cliff and declares to a robot cop that his name is James Tiberius Kirk, which we already knew because this version of events established that already. The story is establishing their respective arcs, Spock's issues with his dual nature, and Kirk's daddy issues. Although Kirk's stuff really serves as more of a background thing than anything that really resolves itself, other than he's really too rebellious and all that. We jump ahead again, and Spock is being grilled by a council of important guys in high chairs, which includes his father, about whether he'll be accepted into the Vulcan Science Academy. He's accepted, but of course the race of beings who ascribe to logic are also kind of prejudiced douche canoes who can't leave well enough alone, saying that it's remarkable that he's achieved so much despite his disadvantage, which when questioned they specifically say his human mother. Naturally, after his mother just told him that she was proud of him no matter what he did with his life, he's all, screw you guys, I'm going to Starfleet. Also, nice job on not defending your wife, Sarek. Guess who will only be having sex every 7 years from now on? If you're lucky.
Spock, you have made a commitment to honor the Vulcan way.
At the moment, Father, I can think of no greater way to honor our race than to attend Starfleet as the first half Vulcan. You can tell that adopted sister I have, but never mention that she can be put into the Science Academy instead.
Right. I'm sure that will be, quite logical. Yeah.
Back over to Kirk, here's another scene I really don't like. Kirk hitting on Uhura at a bar, and him refusing to take her very obvious piss-off asshat attitude. It's incredibly creepy knowing that in a not too far off time from this, Kirk is going to be her boss, and he's not taking no for an answer. Anyway, some other Starfleet cadets intervene and a bar fight breaks out, stopped only by the arrival of Christopher Pike, who clears out the joint to talk to a beaten-up Kirk. Jim has apparently been turning down scholarships and other opportunities so he can bum around Iowa, and he wants to encourage him to enlist in Starfleet. Pike knew his father and sees the same kind of potential for a good officer in him.
You understand what the Federation is, don't you? It's important. It's a peacekeeping and humanitarian armada.
That's a funny way of describing an interstellar alliance of over 100 species for mutual economic, social, and defensive gain, but okay, just claim that Starfleet and the Federation are the same thing. Why not? Pike tells him about a shuttle for new recruits leaving the next morning, and he encourages him to be on it. You know, your father was captain of a starship for 12 minutes. He saved 800 lives, including your mother's. And yours. I dare you to do better. 6 minutes, 1,200 lives. Also, wow, the original Enterprise had a complement of about 400 people. Didn't realize the Kelvin needed twice that amount for a ship that's basically just a saucer section. That night, Kirk drives out to the shipyards where they're shuttling out cadets and sees the Enterprise being constructed there, ending issue 2. I've stated this multiple times now, but I hate seeing the Enterprise under construction on the ground. Yeah, advanced technology would give them anti-gravity and whatnot that probably allows for easier construction on the ground, but this just seems like a waste of resources to do it down on terra firma, especially the energy costs of them having to get it off the ground. But whatever, we need that hero shot of Kirk seeing his destiny and all. Anyway, as issue 3 begins, Kirk shows up for the shuttle ride and is soon joined by Scruffy McDreadpants here.
I may throw up on you.
I think these things are pretty safe. Don't pander to me, kid. One tiny crack in the hull and our blood boils in 13 seconds. Faster if you're the Kool-Aid man. Hell, half the passengers are blue. Wait until you wake up with a case of Andorian shingles. See if you're still so relaxed when your eyeballs are bleeding.
Anyway, I work with the Children's Television Workshop. You?
Space is disease and danger, wrapped in darkness and silence.
So it's like eating at Hardee's.
Kirk points out how, well, the guy wants to work in Starfleet, which is in space. Yeah, well, I got nowhere else to go but up. The wife took the whole damn planet in the divorce. All I got left are my bones.
Well, that and my old Sawbones nickname on account of being a doctor managed to retain the rights to that.
3 years after that, we cut over to Nero's ship. So one of the selling points for this comic was seeing deleted scenes reincorporated into the story, even though, again, you could just get the Blu-ray for those. And for some bizarre reason, they didn't include the deleted scene of explaining what the hell Nero's been doing for 25 years, aka being held prisoner on Rorapente by the Klingons. Mind you, while it's an explanation, it raises a whole bunch more questions that aren't really answered satisfyingly. But at least it's something. Here, their ship has arrived at coordinates that Nero has calculated, but there isn't anything there. And what does Nero say they should do?
We wait for the one who allowed our home to be destroyed, as we've been doing for 25 years.
You know, Nero, just a thought, but, instead of sitting here for 25 years with your thumb up your ass, how about you do, like, anything else? Warn your people of the terrible future awaiting them. Give them advanced technology. Figure out a way to travel back to your own time. Sell that skincare lotion you're obviously using that prevents you guys from aging 25 years because you look exactly the same as you did before. I'm kind of iffy sometimes about criticizing characters making one decision and not another because sometimes in the heat of the moment you can't think properly and hindsight is 20/20 and all that. But these people have had 25 friggin' years to do nothing but think about this. At least the Klingon explanation is something to try to cover this. But whatever. The ship he was looking for emerges from a singularity, and Nero orders them to capture that ship. Over to the Academy, where Kirk is sleeping with an Orion woman. College dorm shenanigans break out when she tries to hide Kirk under her bed due to her roommate, Uhura, showing up. The only thing of relevance with this scene, which is more about showing off women in their underwear, cute, is that Uhura apparently managed to pick up an emergency transmission from Rurapente and how 47 Klingon ships got destroyed. So add that to the list of things Nero could be doing. This ship is capable of wiping out fleets that huge, so he could have conquered the Federation single-handedly. Or, again, given the ship to his own people. The next day, it's the Kobayashi Maru simulation. I've talked about this a bit in my review of the Wrath of Khan comic, but I do wonder how these events played out with Kirk in the original timeline. I've got to assume that he wasn't being such an obvious smug dick about it. I also don't think Spock invented the damn simulation, because that's completely unnecessary. Also, they refer to them as Klingon warbirds, except warbirds are a Romulan thing, and as we have previously established, I am a pedantic nerd. Naturally, when he makes no effort to hide his cheating, there's a very public hearing called where Kirk challenges the validity of the Kobayashi Maru test because the test itself cheats. Spock is then a dick and brings up how Kirk's dad died in a no-win scenario too, and he should understand that. The purpose is to experience fear. Fear in the face of certain death. To accept that fear, and to maintain control of oneself and one's crew. Yeah, not really. You can't really be afraid in a simulation without any real sense of danger, especially not when this is apparently well known, given how you're talking about it publicly in a meeting hall full of people, so someone could just go through the motions and learn nothing. It is indeed a test of character, but it's about how you respond knowing that the test can't be won, accepting it with grace, or trying to come up with a solution to it. Sure, they don't necessarily win the test, but it reveals more about the kind of person they are, not, ooh, be scared because of my super test you can't win. It's like saying you should learn fear because of Pac-Man level 256, since it's also technically unwinnable. In any event, the hearing is postponed because a distress call is made from Vulcan. Since the primary fleet is engaged elsewhere, Starfleet, in their infinite wisdom, is drafting all the cadets into service to populate some starships in orbit who don't have full crews. This is stupid on any number of levels, but whatever, it gets the characters where they need to be. In this case, Uhura has to get Spock to put her on the Enterprise because the two are dating and he didn't want to display favoritism and blah blah blah. Kirk is grounded until the hearing is over, but McCoy decides to do him a favor to get him on board the Enterprise, where he's been assigned as the chief medical officer despite, him not having graduated yet. That favor includes injecting him with a disease so that he can get treated aboard the ship. True friendship is injecting someone with viruses so they can stop pouting about not getting to go into space.